Iris and I were in a car accident at the same time. My boyfriend, the head of orthopedics, brushed my hand away. Clara, don't make trouble. Iris needs surgery immediately. So, I was the one who deserved to die. The day my bones were donated to Julian's department, Julian sat in his office for a day and a night. After that, the most talented orthopedic surgeon in Pujiang Hospital could no longer hold a scalpel. The lights in the ward flickered, and in the blur, I saw someone in a white coat rushing in anxiously. Dr. Julian, the operating room notified us that there's an opening. Who should we prioritize? I reached out and pinched the corner of Julian's white coat and shook it. Julian tilted his head and seemed to frown at me, but I couldn't see clearly. Iris on the next bed started crying again. Julian, am I going to be disabled? Wow, will this surgery leave a scar? So Julian didn't hesitate to brush my hand away. Clara, you just have a few cuts on your face and hands that can be fixed with local anesthesia. Iris's fracture needs immediate surgery. Can you stop making trouble? My head was too dizzy, watching Julian being gentle and tender to Iris, but not even looking at me. I opened my mouth weakly. I wanted to say, Julian, I'm not making trouble. I really don't remember how Iris got hurt. I've never bullied Iris. Why don't you believe me? I can leave you on my own, I'm not that cheap. Julian, can you look at me, please? Until he led people to push Iris out of the ward. The transfer cart made a hollow sound in the hospital corridor in the evening, stabbing into my ears one by one. He didn't look back either. Accompanied by the sound of the vital signs monitor flatlining, my soul began to rise. I saw a nurse calling the on-duty doctor, while pushing a resuscitation cart frantically towards my ward, and I felt a little guilty. I'm sorry. I know death reports are really hard to write. Because of me you have to write another one. I went upwards and floated into the operating room. Julian had just washed his hands and was putting on gloves. After arguing with Julian for so many days, I finally had the chance to re-examine my boyfriend of 7 years. Objectively speaking, Julian's appearance was still very attractive. Back in school, I was bewitched by the sharpness in his eyebrows when he performed experiments and made incisions, and decided to pursue him. Who would have thought he had a childhood sweetheart? I poked him in the back behind him. Actually, I also have a lot of people chasing me. If you had told me earlier, I wouldn't have necessarily been with you. Julian couldn't hear me. He put on his gloves and turned around, passing right through my soul, which startled me. I wanted to curse at him, but then I pursed my lips. Never mind, he can't hear me anyway. The lead door was stepped open, and a circulating nurse came in with a phone. Dr. Julian, downstairs says your department is resuscitating a patient, asking if you want to go take a look. Julian didn't even stop his circling motion to put on his surgical gown. Let them handle it themselves. Can't you see I'm already on the table? I sighed. Julian is like this. Surgery is everything. But today I still suggest you go take a look. After all, the one being resuscitated is me, your girlfriend. Turning my head, I saw Iris's face under the stent and suddenly felt unsure again. In Julian's heart, it's really hard to say who is more important, the dead me or the living Iris. Iris's fracture is not easy to fix, and my resuscitation is not easy to handle either. While Julian was frowning and piecing together bone fragments, the lead door was stepped open a second time. Dr. Julian, downstairs called saying they want to ask Dr. Owen from anesthesia to intubate the patient being resuscitated. The operating room is also a social setting. A great doctor like Julian, of course, has the best anesthesiologist. In my soul's wandering state, I guessed that I was probably dying, so they specifically asked for Dr. Owen, the best anesthesiologist in the anesthesia department at the moment. But Julian refused again. I don't have the habit of changing anesthesiologists during surgery. Okay, Iris's surgery is the most important, more important than my life. I was a little angry and made a face at Julian. When the lead door was stepped open for the third time, Iris's surgery was already taking shape. Dr. Julian, downstairs has been pressing for half an hour. Are you still going to save her? Julian threw the electric drill onto the instrument cart, and finally got angry. Do you even understand? It's been half an hour. Go notify his parents and ask them if they want to save him. If I had to decide, I definitely wouldn't save him. I nodded in agreement. Terminating resuscitation requires a direct family member to agree. It's useless for the people downstairs to ask Julian. It's been half an hour. From a doctor's point of view, there is indeed little chance of saving me. After all, besides loved ones and friends, who would be willing to exhaust everything to seek a miracle. Iris's surgery ended late at night. I don't know why, I didn't follow my corpse, but I couldn't leave Julian within 2 meters. He seemed to have completely forgotten me. He waited in the recovery room for 2 hours until Iris was completely awake, before returning to the ward together. Julian personally carried Iris to the bed and put a pillow behind her, waiting for the nurse to hang up the 4-bag before looking at my bed. "Where's Clara?" The nurse was stunned for a moment, as if she hadn't expected him to be so calm. She carefully worded her reply. "Her mother picked her up in the first half of the night." Julian nodded and said nothing more. After a while, I saw him walk to the window, open his phone, and the communication interface displayed wife. He seemed very hesitant. Just as his well-defined hand was about to press down, Iris's voice came from behind him. Iris pinched her throat, sat pale-faced on the bed, and nervously twisted her fingers. "Julian, why don't you call my sister?" I believe she didn't know that pushing me would make me so seriously injured. Julian paused upon hearing this. His eyes flashed with anger as he glanced at Iris's leg, and then he exited the communication interface on his phone. He walked back to Iris's bedside, touched Iris's head, and was again extremely gentle. "There's no need. You're so seriously injured. If she doesn't reflect on herself for a couple of days, she won't know she's wrong." I almost laughed out loud in anger. If I couldn't touch Julian, I would have loved to kick him a few times. Wrong, what wrong did I do? I pushed her when I saw Iris about to be hit by a motorcycle to save her life. "Didn't you see that my head hit the motorcycle, and I had a cerebral hemorrhage?" At that time, I couldn't remember because of the cerebral hemorrhage, but now that I'm dead, I remember everything. But thinking about it again, I became listless again. It wouldn't have mattered even if I had remembered at that time. Julian, would never have believed me anyway. Julian stayed in Iris's ward until the next morning. When he walked out of Iris's ward to hand over the shift, everyone was clearly startled. After a moment of exchanging glances, the resident doctor, who was slightly closer to him, tentatively asked, "Dr. Julian, your girlfriend. Aren't you going back to see her?" Julian impatiently waved his hand, as if he didn't want to hear people mention me. "It doesn't matter whether I see her or not, it's just a small matter." Since Julian had said so, the people below didn't dare to say much. I just heard a female trainee doctor following behind him while he was doing rounds, muttering, "I didn't realize that Dr. Julian was such a cold-hearted person." I sneered beside her. Julian is not a cold and unfeeling person at all. Until the rounds reached Iris's ward. Even Julian's eyebrows relaxed a lot. "I'll change this patient's dressing personally. We must not leave a scar on a girl's body." I looked at the girl who had complained earlier, and she was already dumbfounded. "See? He's always different to Iris." Julian was peeling an apple for Iris when Mom called. Mom's voice came through the phone, sounding extremely tired, which worried me. "Julian, aren't you going to come see Clara?" Julian put down the knife in his hand, appearing much more respectful. "Auntie, Iris still has a fractured leg, I can't leave you." Mom's voice suddenly became sharp. "She can't leave? Then do you know that Clara is pregnant? She's carrying your child." Julian's eyes widened, and the hand holding the phone clenched tighter. Just as he was about to speak, Mom's voice began to sob again. "Forget it, what's the point of me telling you all this? Anyway, the person is gone. Julian, you just stay with your Iris. Let's not have any more contact in the future." Mom hung up the phone as she spoke, but I was so anxious that I wanted to crawl inside. Last night, I don't know how I left the hospital, but Mom must have been very sad. I pressed Julian's phone, trying to call back, but could only pass through the phone again and again. Souls have no tears. "Mom, don't cry, I'm right here, don't worry." Julian was still blankly holding the phone. I couldn't help but kick and punch him. "Julian, are you useless? Call Mom back." "How's my mom doing? Go check on her." "What's gone?" Julian muttered to himself, then suddenly seemed to react and rushed out of the ward, slamming his hand on the desk in front of the doctor who had treated me last night, his voice trembling. Miller, you were on duty last night. Did you handle Clara's injuries? Dr. Miller looked up at Julian's red eyes, stunned for a moment. Dr. Julian. You. I'm asking you if she had a miscarriage. Julian's suddenly raised tone startled Dr. Miller. Dr. Julian, please accept my condolences. We only realized in the end that the patient was pregnant. Julian staggered backward, as if all his strength had left him. He suddenly took off his white coat and turned to walk out. I kept urging him by his side. Walk faster. Faster. Go see how my mom is. Just as the elevator arrived and I was about to go in with Julian, he stood still. I followed his gaze and saw Iris crawling out of the ward, dragging her leg, sometime in the past. It's over. We can't get on this elevator. Sure enough. The elevator closed and went down, and Julian turned back and carried Iris back to the bed. Iris trembled in Julian's arms, her eyes filled with tears. Julian, did something happen to sister? I'm sorry, I saw her buying abortion pills, it's all my fault. If my leg hadn't been broken, I should have told you earlier. Iris was still saying something, but Julian was stunned. His eyes reddened. He stiffly sat back by the bed, covered his face for a long time, and then said in a hoarse voice, She didn't want my child, it has nothing to do with you. I looked at Julian's sad expression, almost on the verge of tears, but I only felt a cold laugh in my heart. Based on my medical background, Julian should have known with a little thought that if I wanted an abortion, I would have chosen a curettage rather than a medical abortion. So Julian believes everything Iris says. That's why I can't win against her. I touched my flat stomach to make sure there was no such thing as a ghost fetus, and sighed. This is my second pregnancy. The first time was when Julian and I had just graduated, and were looking for jobs. At that time, Julian was overjoyed. He proposed to me without hesitation, saying that he would support me, but I relied on my youth and disregarded his pleas for the sake of my career, and aborted the child. Our wedding was therefore delayed for so many years. Actually, I know this is a knot in his heart, but I don't regret it. If Julian can't understand, that's his own problem. As for this second child, I never felt its existence from beginning to end. Maybe leaving is the best outcome. After all, given the state of my and Julian's relationship recently, even if I were still alive, it might not end well. Julian called me again, of course no one answered. So he opened WeChat and sent a long voice message. Clara, no matter what you want to do, you shouldn't have aborted our child again without saying a word. Come home before 8 o'clock tonight, and I'll give you one last chance to explain. This man is sometimes really inexplicable. Give me a chance to explain? Iris has already made it up for him, won't she? Would he listen if I told him? Besides, I can't say it anymore. I felt a little gloomy. After work, Julian first went to the cake shop and bought a strawberry cake. It's from my favorite shop. Unfortunately, I like the limited edition mango flavor. He can never buy it and always makes me settle for it. He took the box home, cooked red date porridge and stewed bone broth. He sat at the dining table from the afternoon until dusk. I know he's waiting for me. In the 3 years that Iris has appeared, there have been countless times that I wished he could sit down and talk to me calmly like today. But I never thought that it would be realized today when we are separated by life and death. But after all, he is the person I truly loved, and I still feel a little sad. I sat down across from him. Julian, let it go. You won't be able to wait for me. Of course, Julian couldn't hear me. He took out his phone again, opening and closing it frantically, as if he had a nervous habit. At 7:30, his phone rang. Julian's eyes lit up, but when he saw the department's number, his face showed disappointment, but he still answered. Dr. Julian, bed 27 has a high fever and convulsions. Do you think you should come take a look? Iris is in bed 27. How could he not go? Without hesitation, he put on his coat and rushed to the hospital again. Iris was indeed pitiful, her cheeks flushed red from the fever. Julian pursed his lips, checked Iris's medication, and changed the prescription, doing everything himself from pouring water to checking the foredrip. This reminded me of last year when I had appendicitis surgery and wanted Julian to stay with me, but he said the hospital had nurses and told me not to be so spoiled. What, is Iris his precious darling? Iris woke up and cried again. Julian, I'm sorry, I know you wanted to talk to sister today. My body is too useless. Julian's fingers moved, as if he just remembered the time. He hurriedly checked his phone and frowned when he saw that it was already past the agreed time, and there were no messages from me. The porridge is in the pot, the soup is in the thermos, the cake is in the refrigerator, eat a little less, rest well, I'll be back tomorrow morning. After saying that, he seemed to think it was inappropriate and added, Iris can't be left alone. I'm begging you, Clara, please don't throw a tantrum anymore, okay? I rolled my eyes. I never throw tantrums. As for who does it the most, go listen at the nurse's station. The nurses at the nurse's station were already gathered together, gossiping and whispering. This bed 27 has finally calmed down. Before Dr. Julian came, she was desperate to die, now she's just pretending. See, everyone knows, but Julian doesn't understand. It's already the third day. Even the hospital leaders are ordering wreaths for my funeral. When will Julian realize that I'm dead? I looked at Julian, who had finished working and was sleeping in the duty room, and sighed even more heavily. It seems that after work, we have been separated a lot. Neurosurgery and orthopedics are on the upper and lower floors of the surgical building, staring at each other wearily. We work in the same hospital, but we hardly ever see each other. Day shifts, night shifts, standby shifts, even when we are resting at home, we can only see each other 2 or 3 times a week at most. Maybe that's why we've grown apart. Iris is a fly, but our egg is full of cracks. Today, the hospital leaders notified Julian to go to the office building at some point, apparently to discuss receiving my skeleton. That was when we first graduated and got our certificates. Julian and I went to do blood donation, bone marrow, and body donation notarization all in one go to celebrate. If we both die one day, his skull will be specifically donated to the neurosurgery department I chose, and my skeleton will be specifically donated to the orthopedics department he chose. To us recent graduates, bone exchange was both faith and love. I strolled around Julian's office, picking out my spot, behind Julian's desk. With my back to the sunlight, I could still see people coming and going outside the office, so I wouldn't be lonely. It was a rare good place. Julian woke up and checked his phone again, finally seeming to realize that not contacting me for 3 days was too long, and something must be wrong. He called over Dr. Miller again, the unlucky fellow I had to save. He hesitated, his conscience finally getting the better of him, and he finally asked me a couple of questions. Clara. Did she suffer much that day? Dr. Miller wore a bitter face. After all, someone had died, and even if he hadn't done anything wrong, he felt guilty. She shouldn't have suffered. It was quite quick. When we got there wasn't much we could do. I was speechless. Didn't you know if I was in pain? You didn't even ask me with all those big cuts that day. But Julian wasn't satisfied. What number thread was used for the absorbable sutures? Do you have photos of the skin? Miller was baffled. I don't think we used absorbable sutures. Photos. Haven't you seen the body yourself? A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Julian's face. Then he suddenly realized something was wrong and abruptly stood up. Why didn't you use absorbable sutures on the facial wounds? What if she's disfigured? Hurry up and pack a bag for me. As he spoke, Julian took out his phone, frantically bringing up my contact information, but before he could press the call button, Dr. Miller cautiously opened his mouth. But our department doesn't have a precedent for using cosmetic sutures on corpses. The air seemed to freeze for a moment. Julian gently raised his head. What did you say? Corpse. He looked extremely puzzled, dryly pursed his lips, and pretended to be relaxed. You must have made a mistake, right? I'm talking about Clara, my girlfriend. You know her, the Clara who was admitted to the hospital that night with bed 27 and discharged in the middle of the night. Dr. Miller was confused but instinctively felt something was wrong, and he swallowed his saliva. Dr. Julian, haven't we been talking about Clara? Your girlfriend, the Clara who died while you were performing surgery on bed 27. When Julian arrived at the neurosurgery department, the janitor was taking down my photo. What are you doing? Julian picked up my headshot from the ground, his eyes bloodshot. Who told you to take down Clara's photo? The janitor recognized Julian. Dr. Julian, this The head nurse of the neurosurgery department heard the commotion and came out, telling the janitor to leave first. Julian? Are you trying to cause trouble with such a loud voice? Julian tried his best to put on a polite smile, but it looked worse than crying. Head nurse, I'm here to find Clara, can you ask her to come out for a moment? The head nurse glared at Julian fiercely. Dr. Julian, are you so out of the loop? Don't you know our Clara has already? As she spoke, the head nurse wiped away her tears and snatched the photo from Julian's hand. A small doctor's photo from our neurosurgery department. No need for the bone surgery knife to bother. I originally wanted to applaud the head nurse for her sharp rebuttal, worthy of all the milk tea I bought her, but I also felt a little sorry for her. Don't cry for me. Your eyes will be red, and you won't have the strength to argue with the nursing department later. Julian's gaze was vacant, as if he hadn't heard the head nurse's words, and he murmured, Head nurse, don't joke with me. I know Clara is angry with me. She's just a playful person. I should coax her more. He took a long stride into the department, and in a few steps he reached the doctor's office. Clara? Clara. As he spoke, he suddenly saw that my desk had been cleared. His face changed drastically, and he grabbed Mike by the collar, clenching his teeth and his veins popping out. Where are Clara's things? Why are they all gone? Fortunately, all the doctors were in the office. Seeing one of their own being bullied, even if it was the highly respected Julian, they wouldn't tolerate it. Someone immediately grabbed Julian's hand and pushed him hard against the wall. Why are they all gone? Does Dr. Julian not know the reason in his heart? I heard from the anesthesiology department that even after asking Dr. Julian 3 times they couldn't get Dr. Julian off the operating table. Dr. Julian is truly dedicated to his work. Ryan, who had been admitted to the hospital with me, wanted nothing more than to tear Julian's flesh apart. 2 people admitted to the hospital at the same time, one with a comminuted fracture and the other with skin trauma. Does that seem reasonable to you? Clara had such obvious symptoms of transient amnesia. Why didn't you suspect a brain hemorrhage, do a CT scan, and send her back to us? Are fractures the only thing in your orthopedic minds? The person had already been sent to the emergency room and into the hands of you, a great expert. Look at what you wrote. Multiple soft tissue contusions? If your orthopedics department didn't have a doctor or bed, we could have sent someone to bring her back, or we could have gone to pick her up. Our department has plenty of doctors who could have treated her. This is medical malpractice. Dr. Morgan, who loved me the most, also came to the office after hearing the commotion. He first looked around and told everyone to sit down. Then he turned to Julian, being very polite. Dr. Julian, I have already applied to seal Clara's medical records. If there are any problems in the process, let's take a look at them slowly. Our department is small, so we won't see Dr. Julian out. Julian was driven away in a lost and dejected state. But who can be blamed for this? I told you I couldn't remember how I got hurt, but you believed Iris and thought I was lying. I told you I was dizzy, but you told me not to pretend to be pitiful, that Iris couldn't wait any longer. In the end, I didn't have the strength and could only clutch your clothes for help, but you still said I was making a fuss. Julian, I had clearly arrived at the hospital and should have received the most objective diagnosis and treatment, but my treatment was delayed because of your prejudice. You were the one who killed me. I finally met my mother when Julian was kneeling in front of my house. My mother was in much better condition than I had imagined, and my younger sister had also returned home to be with her. That's good. Now I can rest assured. My mother has always been a kind-hearted person, but even after Julian knelt for an afternoon, her attitude didn't soften in the slightest. Even if you kneel here until you die, I will never let you see Clara. My younger sister also looked at Julian with disgust. Don't you have an Iris? I heard she broke her leg. Why aren't you staying with your darling and coming to my house? Julian, you better pray I don't find out what that woman did to my sister, or I won't let her go. Just then, Iris's phone rang again. Julian, my leg hurts so much, can you come and see me? I heard sister. My sister snatched the phone. Who are you calling sister, you bitch? My sister only has one younger sister. Say the wrong thing again, and I'll tear your mouth apart. I hugged my sister weakly. Don't be angry, don't worry about them, your sister is still okay. My sister threw the phone back to Julian and turned around to leave with my mother. Julian didn't straighten his back for a long time. I was bound to him and got impatient waiting for him to move, so I lowered my head to take a look. He was already in tears. Iris called again cautiously. Julian, who was that just now? She's so fierce. Julian didn't answer Iris, but instead asked in a hoarse voice. Iris, tell me, did Clara really push you down the stairs that day and deliberately hurt you? Of course not. Iris. Julian, are you doubting me? How could I lie to you? Julian hung up the phone expressionlessly. He came to the place where the accident happened that day. Looking up, the traffic camera was right above. My car was hit. Julian went to the traffic police brigade. He made up an excuse that his car had been hit and went to the monitoring room. But he didn't expect my mother and sister to already be inside. Followed by the police. They looked at Julian with a mocking smile. It seems your car was hit on the same day Clara had her accident. My mother and sister were convinced that I had been harmed, so they chose to call the police to find out the truth. And what was Julian afraid of? Using a clumsy excuse to steal a glimpse of the truth. Could I really have fallen to my death myself? Just to frame Iris? The monitoring video went back in time, and soon everything became clear. Iris and I were standing by the road talking when a motorcycle rushed over. I pushed Iris away, but I was hit and sent flying. I nodded. I raised my chin and looked at Julian. That's exactly what happened. Iris ran over herself and said she wanted to explain her relationship with Julian, so that I wouldn't misunderstand. As a result, I argued with her for a long time, but she couldn't explain clearly. Then a motorcycle came. If I hadn't pushed her, Iris might have died today. Julian's face was extremely ugly. Idiot. My sister cried and cursed. I wanted to wipe away her tears, but I touched an empty space. It's okay, sister. My sister is smarter than me. Take care of Mom from now on, okay? The truth was revealed. I breathed a sigh of relief and wanted to turn around and leave, but I realized that everyone was still standing still. This surveillance footage wasn't over yet. Iris actually stood up. Wait, what about her fracture? In the footage, the motorcycle turned back, and the young man driving the motorcycle got off, and seemed to say something to Iris. Then Iris walked over to me and broke her own leg. My hair stood on end, and goosebumps erupted all over my body. What was this thing? How was she even more like a ghost than me? What followed was pretty much as I remembered. I groggily woke up, saw Iris pretending to be unconscious, and quickly called 120. But because of the brain trauma, I couldn't remember anything before. Iris seized the opportunity and claimed I pushed her. Even though I didn't believe I would push someone, I, with amnesia, had no way to defend myself. Even in the ambulance, Julian considered the seemingly unharmed me as harboring deep thoughts and treated me casually. Julian's face was deathly pale. After all, in his heart, Iris had always been that cute little sister who needed his constant care. Now suddenly discovering she was a man-eating flower must have been a huge shock to him. His voice was hoarse, and his tall figure seemed to slump instantly. He lowered his head in front of my mother. Auntie, I will definitely avenge Clara. Avenge? My mother's gaze was ice-cold, like a sharp sword piercing Julian. Who wants this kind of underhanded dealings? My daughter will get a fair and just outcome, not someone's selfish whims. Saying that, my mother and sister turned and bowed to the police officers, tears welling up in their eyes. The police officers returned the bow. They all went out, leaving only Julian hidden in the shadows. Iris's leg wasn't healed when the police took her away. She cried and clung to Julian's leg, but was pried loose by the police. Julian, tell them I didn't do it. Don't you believe me? Julian's lips moved, his eyes dark. I, on the other hand, tilted my head and watched them, only regretting that I didn't have sunflower seeds and soda. Iris, when people do wrong, they have to pay the price. There's surveillance footage. Julian's face was full of exhaustion. I could understand. Iris was the dying wish of his mother's best friend, the little sister he had raised since she was a child. Who would believe she could really do such a thing? The moment the word surveillance came out, Iris's expression changed drastically. She straightened up, put away her pitiful expression, and wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with her fingertips. Okay, I'm too lazy to pretend anyway. Julian, thank you for taking care of me, goodbye. She even had a smile on her face as she entered the police car. Dr. Morgan disregarded the hospital's warnings, collected evidence, sorted out the logic, and analyzed my medical records word by word. Finally, he handed the materials to my mother. Sue them. This is medical malpractice. If it had been a little later, or if Julian had been willing to look at my pupils or do a CT scan, I wouldn't have even needed a craniotomy. A simple burr-hole surgery would have saved me. But Julian violated the ethics of a doctor and blindly believed Iris. In court, Julian admitted to all the mistakes, but the hospital was unwilling to lose this great expert. They hired the best lawyers, and in the end, they paid a large sum of money and demoted him. Although it was called a demotion, everyone knew he was still the head of the department. Dr. Morgan spent an entire afternoon in the president's office slamming the table, but he couldn't change the decision. When he came out, he saw Julian standing at the door, the fat on his face trembling violently. Julian, do you think only you can save people? Our Clara was also the most talented doctor. You let a neurosurgeon die of a brain hemorrhage because of a delayed rescue. Julian was much more dejected. Dark stubble covered his entire chin, and his shirt hung loosely on his body, like a wandering soul. I know. His voice was so soft it was like it came from the sky. So you better live up to the hospital's efforts to protect you. Live up to Clara's life. Dr. Morgan, who was almost retired, gritted his teeth and cursed in a low voice, making my heart ache. Director, don't be sad. You've already done a lot for me. It's just a pity that I'm not good enough and let you down. You will have better juniors and students. Julian's hands, however, were trembling slightly in his sleeves, and he never looked up. Julian hired a private investigator from somewhere. I have to say he was really good. He laid bare everything that had happened between me and Iris in the past 3 years. Some things I didn't even remember myself, but the private investigator knew. From this vast amount of evidence, I also realized how persistent Iris was. It was something new she had gained that she could break me and Julian apart. Julian applied for a visit. Separated by a glass window, he pasted the evidence one by one in front of Iris's eyes. Iris, do you hate me that much? Iris had lost a lot of weight. She had bruises on her face, and her expression was extremely puzzled. I never hated you. On the contrary, I wanted to marry you. Blame Clara for blocking my way. Julian's throat bobbed and veins bulged. His eyes were full of red bloodshot from staying up all night. You still don't know how to repent even now. I was so good to you. You actually hurt the person I love the most. How could you be so vicious? Iris's face turned cold after Julian roared at her, and she narrowed her eyes. The words she spoke were sharper than knives. Who cares who you like? I just wanted to marry you. I don't like you. Yes, I know you treat me well as a sister, but would you buy me a house as a sister? Would you buy me a car? Would you buy me bags and diamond rings? I was fighting for my future. What kind of emotional attachment are you talking about? I didn't want to descend in social class after my mother's death, so I could only find someone of the same class to marry. If there wasn't anyone else around, do you think I'd be willing to go to the trouble of being a mistress? I admit that I lost my life because I wasn't as skilled as others. I'm sorry to Clara, I admit that too. But you're eating what's in the bowl while looking at what's in the pot, constantly saying love, love, love. But in reality, you're hooked as soon as someone beckons. Why should I be the only one who gets hurt by you? Why don't you reflect on yourself? Before being taken away by the prison guard, Iris looked at Julian with contempt in her eyes. Scumbag, we both have our own retribution. You better pray that you die early, because Clara will definitely not be waiting for you on the road to the afterlife. Julian slumped in his chair, neither crying nor laughing, tears streaming down his face. This was the first time I had seen him so distraught. He staggered out of the detention center, covered his eyes in the sunlight, slowly squatted down, and called my mother. Auntie, please tell me where Clara's grave is, okay? You can ask me to do anything. Dream on. My mother was ruthless. Dr. Morgan originally wanted to retrieve my skeleton for our department. But the designated donation really couldn't be changed. Actually, I didn't care. It didn't matter where the donation was placed. Julian didn't think so. He wiped the place he had prepared for my skeleton with disinfectant at least 8 times. I never thought I would see what my complete skeleton looked like in my lifetime. The artisan who made it was very meticulous, and even the damaged part of my skull was neatly fixed. I was very satisfied, but Julian's eyes made me uneasy. He was really crazy. He actually insisted on dressing my skeleton in clothes. No one in their department dared to stop him, and they let him go crazy. Fortunately, he dressed me in a white coat. If it had been some colorful dress, I might have had to study how to come back to life and kill him. Julian then took out a diamond ring that God knows when he bought. Seeing him about to touch my claws, I frantically chanted in my heart, "Don't put it on, don't put it on." Perhaps the prayer worked. He actually stopped. Tears fell. "I'm sorry." He hunched his back as if in extreme pain, his fingers hooked on the acrylic cover, and a suppressed ho sound came from his throat. So pitiful. But so what? Actually, I don't quite understand what deep affection he's pretending now. Iris is hard to evaluate, but her understanding of Julian is definitely higher than Julian's own. He just wants it all. Like that mango cake I always thought was impossible to buy. I had even seen it in Iris's hands. Since I'm not the first priority, what gives you the right to call yourself my lover? So you know late-arriving affection is cheaper than weeds. Sunrise and sunset. Julian sat facing me for a day and a night, looking withered. If it weren't for his breathing, I'd wonder whose skeleton was the specimen, his or mine. He is, after all, a top orthopedic surgeon. When there was a car accident emergency admission, people from his department were pushing and shoving each other, forcing themselves to call him. Dr. Julian, do you think you can come reduce this fracture? Julian seemed to wake up suddenly, turned his head and saw the X-ray, and his hand trembled again. There was fear in his eyes. Washing hands, disinfecting, putting on gown and gloves. The large drape was spread out. Julian picked up the scalpel, not as confident as usual, and anxiety appeared on his face. The operating lamp would reveal all shadows in every detail. Julian clearly already had the blade on the incision site, but repeatedly turned his head. His Adam's apple bobbed, and cold sweat almost dripped onto the table. Dr. Julian? Dr. Julian? Someone seemed to be calling him, but he only felt that everything in front of him was a raging flood. Julian couldn't take it anymore, and rushed out of the operating room, dropping the scalpel. I followed behind him, watching him collapse, as if seeing the fall of a genius doctor. I knew, perhaps he could no longer stand on the operating table. The hospital valued Julian extremely and specially arranged for someone to investigate the reason, and finally determined it was a psychological factor. When I stand on the table with the knife, I always think of the night Clara was being rescued. 3 times, each time I could have saved her. It only needed a burr hole. I knew it. Why did I still let her die? In the end, I actually said not to save her. Even if the chance was slim, she still had hope. Doctor, if she knew, how much would she hate me? Actually, I don't hate you that much. I sighed, but he couldn't hear me say that. Everyone knew Julian was done for. What's an orthopedic doctor who can't hold a knife called? The hospital had come forward to let him switch to internal medicine and start over, but he directly refused and wanted to guard my skeleton to the death. Waves of people came to persuade him, and finally Dr. Morgan personally came forward. You've already caused an excellent neurosurgeon to die. Are you going to ruin another orthopedic surgeon? Unless you can prove the meaning of your existence, why should the hospital keep you here? Julian was speechless, gritted his teeth and tried countless times, but all ended in failure. He seemed to be forever trapped in the day of the either/or choice, struggling in all directions, with no way forward. I once fell in love with the sharp look in his eyes when he held the scalpel, but now I only see sadness. He was finally transferred to a research position because he accepted all arrangements, but was unwilling to leave orthopedics. On the day he held the scalpel again to do experiments, I seemed to see the overlapping shadows of the past and the future. In the very beginning of all the entanglement, it turned out I wasn't without resentment and obsession. He seemed to sense something and looked in my direction. Clara, have you forgiven me? How is that possible? I traced the outline of his eyebrows and eyes, and only felt unfamiliar. I could never forgive him. Please live on. dragging out your life with guilt, Julian. I'm leaving. I won't wait for you on the road to the Yellow Springs.